is the new 2025 Mercedes-AMG G63, and it's amazing just how much people love this vehicle. You may not love it. You may hate it, in fact, for its massive price tag, its gas-guzzling V8, and its rich bro image. But the market loves it. This car has been sold out for years, and it's updated for 25. So today I'm going to review the latest G63 and show you all of its quirks and features.
Now I want to take a second to talk about something that's not a car, but still very important: cold brew. I like to always have cold brew ready in the fridge, especially when I have guests over. I have a lot of energy, and cold brew lets my guests keep up with me. It's the easiest way to offer something that feels thoughtful and way better than just handing someone a warm bottle of water. But I used to rely on bad-tasting grocery store concentrate or timely and expensive cafe runs until I found Trade. Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the US for hot and cold coffee, and they've made it incredibly easy to make delicious cold brew at home. They send you beans roasted specifically for cold brew, grind them just right, and even offer the simple gear to brew it. All I do is scoop it into a pitcher with water, leave it in the fridge over the night, and the next morning, cold brew tastes like it came from one of those fancy cafes. They've teamed up with 15 amazing roasters to create a cold brew collection that's smooth, flavorful, and way better than anything I've bought off the shelf. And honestly, with Trade, I get better coffee, more convenience, and I spend less than I would buying out, especially when I'm serving it to a bunch of friends. Just look at this big bag of beans. And the feedback from my guests has been fantastic. Keeps the real coffee snobs happy. For a limited time, Trade is giving 50% off a month of cold brew. That's around 60 cups of cold brew for 50% off when you go to drinktrade.com/Doug. That's drinktrade.com/Doug to get 50% off 1 month of cold brew. drinktrade.com/Doug.
All right, time for the quirks and features of the updated G-Wagon. Believe it or not, the new G-Wagon came out for the 2019 model year, so this is its 7th year in production. It still feels new, but it isn't. And so for 25, there are some pretty big changes, although the majority of the biggest stuff is not on the G63. The biggest change is definitely the addition of an electric model, which is called the G580 with EQ technology, one of the worst named cars in the industry. I have already reviewed that. But there's also a change to the base model, the G550, which for 25 loses its V8. The base level G-Wagon has always had a V8 here in the United States since it came out back in '02, more than 20 years ago, but it's gone now. For 25, the G550 has a twin turbo hybrid straight 6. It's a good powertrain, and it has more power than the old V8, 443 horses compared to 416, but it's not a V8 anymore. If you want a V8 in a G-Wagon, the only way you can do it now is with a G63. So those are the big changes to the G lineup, but even the 63 gets some updates as well. The most notable is a slightly revised front end design. The goal here is improved aerodynamics. So the front end, the grille, has been reshaped. Not very obviously, not very hugely, but it's different. Mercedes-Benz also says the A-pillars are different, so around the windshield, I don't really see a difference here, but they're different, Mercedes says. The most noticeable change for 25 comes above the windshield, where Mercedes-Benz has added this little spoiler, this roof spoiler, to the top of the car. Like the other front-end changes, this was apparently done to improve aerodynamics, and I presume all of these aero upgrades were mainly aimed at the new electric G-Wagon, but since they're making other G-Wagons too, they figured let's put them on all of them and kind of simplify production, and so that's what we get. A slightly revised, slightly more aero-friendly G-Wagon for 25. And on that note of improving efficiency, for the 25 model year, the G63 has gone hybrid. It's not a plug-in hybrid or a Prius. obvious. It's just a mild hybrid system that's now been attached to the big old twin-turbo V8 that is otherwise unchanged. So you get better aero and a hybrid system, and yet it doesn't really improve fuel economy, which still stands at 14 miles per gallon in the city, 16 miles per gallon in the highway. This is not a particularly efficient vehicle. How could it be when it looks like this, so blocky and boxy, and when it has this powertrain? Again, unchanged. That means it's a 4-liter twin-turbo V8 with 577 horsepower, 627 pound-feet of torque. Four-wheel drive is still standard, 0 to 60 in around 4 seconds, so this is massively fast for a giant blocky box. And also carried over from before, there is still a plaque on the plastic engine cover that tells us who built this particular engine at Mercedes-AMG. The name of the person who hand-built this one is on there, and you still have a little warning label under the hood that reminds you if you're wearing a tie and getting under your hood, it could get caught in the fan and kill you. Not that anybody doing work under the hood on their G-Wagon will ever be wearing a tie, but it's possible, and they don't want bad things to happen to you. Now, in addition to the upgraded aero, the mild hybrid system, and the other changes, there are also some technology improvements on the inside, which I'll show you in a little bit. But first, let's talk exterior quirks of the G-Wagon. The most obvious exterior quirks are, well, obvious. Let's just get it out of the way. The color. Mercedes-Benz calls this copper orange magno. It's a flat orange that is very noticeable on the road, and it costs an amazing $6,500 extra for this color. That is a pretty obvious exterior quirk. And then we have the wheels. These deep dish flat 5-spoke wheels are intended to be kind of a heritage play to remind you of AMG wheels in the late 90s and early 2000s. To be honest, I loved those wheels. I don't entirely love these, but they are quite popular and quite expensive. These wheels are $4,700 options if you want them. Combine the wheels and the paint color, and this thing is turning heads. It's not just a G-Wagon, it's a look at me G-Wagon. And since we're talking about pricing, let's just talk pricing. This now starts at $187,000. That is huge money. Even the base model G-Wagon, the G550, now has a starting price of $150,000. That's pre-tariffs. Probably will increase. Now, 150 grand is what the G63 used to cost back when this new G-Wagon came out in 19. So the prices have escalated rapidly for this vehicle, but it makes sense. As Mercedes-Benz has increased the prices, it hasn't really declined in demand. There are still long waiting lists, especially for the G63 at dealerships all around the country, all around the world. They can't build them fast enough, and so it only makes sense to continue increasing the prices because it's pretty clear people will pay them. This car just has massive demand. Now, as for pricing for this particular one, with the wheels and the color and a bunch of other stuff I'll show you inside, the sticker price comes to around $235,000. Massive money. That's where you can equip a G-Wagon. It's just gotten so expensive. But anyway, let's talk through the other exterior quirks worth noting in the G-Wagon. For one, the push bar looking thing in the front bumper. Unfortunately, this remains standard default on all US market G63s, which I think is such a shame. I hate the way it looks. It clearly doesn't have any real functionality, and other markets don't have it standard. Here in San Diego, we see Mexican market cars all the time. I've seen a Mexican G63 new body that does not have that push bar, and it looks so much better. Why not give us the option? But they don't. You get a G63, you get the push bar. Now, I may not love that, but I do love all the other G-Wagon stuff. It's always been beloved about these cars. Like, for instance, the exposed door hinges, which just look so cool. Old school, utilitarian. Obviously, they could hide them. They know how to do that now, but they don't because that's a G-Wagon. Same deal with the turn signal mounted on the front fender. You don't have to put it there anymore. You could integrate it into some beautiful head headlight design, but then it just wouldn't be a G-Wagon. And speaking of the old school feel, the door handles with the little push button to open them, and how about the way they sound when they open and close? Take a listen. And speaking of the sound, the engine makes quite a rumble. The twin-turbo V8, you can't rev it all the way up in park, but you get a little bit of an idea of the rumbly exhaust note. Again, take a listen. Now, one drawback of the boxy utilitarian look is that the spare tire stays on the back. Now, people love that. They love the rear-mounted spare. It makes it seem capable and off-road ready, but the problem is that it means the rear tailgate is really heavy because it has a tire mounted on it, and it also means you can never do a power tailgate like every other nice SUV has because it's just too heavy to have a tailgate that lifts up with the tire mounted on it. So instead, you get this old school opening door that's pretty heavy to open, and you don't get it power operated. A bit of an old school concession in order to have the cool look of that rear mounted spare. Now, when you open the tailgate, get into the cargo area, you can see some pro and some con in here. The obvious benefit is it's pretty big, wide, flat, and tall. Because of the boxy shape, you don't have some sloping roof line coming to steal your cargo space. You can get everything you need back here. But there are drawbacks. For one, you can't go under the floor for extra storage. And you don't really have any extra storage compartments on the side either for smaller items. Milk jugs, wine bottles, there's no great place to put them in the back of a G-Wagon, no little small item storage. Also worth noting back here, there's no latch or button to fold down the back seats, like there is in basically every other nice SUV. Again, the G kind of shows its age a little bit here. You don't have that feature, and you also don't have a US household style power plug back here. There is a 12-volt plug, which is nice to have, but a household plug would be especially nice for charging devices, whatever, while you're driving or while you're parked, but you don't get it in back. So the rear is a big practical space, but there are some limitations compared to less old-fashioned off-roady SUVs. And next up we climb inside the G-Wagon, and first I want to talk about what's new in here for 25. One new feature is some new off-road drive modes, which you can access once you turn on the center diff lock. It gives you access to a sand mode, a trail mode, and a rock mode. Depending on which surface you're driving on, you can select the corresponding mode, and then the vehicle will configure itself to optimize for driving on that particular surface. Also, another off-road improvement here, there's an upgraded camera system that now allows for a under-the-car clear view system like you have in other off-road vehicles. The new Defender has this and a few other off-roaders. Now it's in the G-Wagon too, which is cool. But by far the most welcome and important change for 25 is that the adaptive cruise control driver assist technology finally now has a lane centering feature, meaning the car will not just speed up and slow down based on the cars in front of you, but it will also steer for you. Other Mercedes-Benz models have had this feature for years. It has never come to the G-Wagon. Very annoying, but it is finally here for 25 in the G, and that's a great upgrade. But beyond those new features for 25, the interior is largely the same as the old one, and that means a rather interesting blend of utilitarian and luxury. This one is particularly luxurious because it includes the manufacturer full leather interior package, which costs $16,000 extra, and the manufacturer interior package plus, which costs $8,250 extra. I have no idea what any of that means, but it adds $24,000 to the price of this car, and there is stitched leather everywhere in this interior. In fact, there's even a manufacturer script on the grab handle on the passenger side, which seems so counterintuitive. This off-road grab handle's positioned here so you don't fly out of your seat when you're doing crazy maneuvers, and yet the luxurious manufacturer script is on it, and it's stitched in contrast color leather. It doesn't make any sense, but that's the situation. Again, a very interesting blend of luxury and utilitarian. Now, the most obviously utilitarian components of this interior, in addition to the grab handle, is just the way it's laid out. It's very upright, very square. You don't have a lot of swooping lines in here like in so many other cars. It's clearly intended to be a boxy, tough off-road vehicle, and that's obvious even with all of the high-end leather and luxury touches they've added over the years. But anyway, moving on to the other interesting quirks in this interior. For one, the moment you open the door, you see a little plaque that has an image of a G-Wagon, and it says Schokol Proved. Apparently that is a reference to a very famous off-road track in Austria near Graz where they build this vehicle that has served as a testing ground for the G-Wagon, and the badge is on there showing that it can do the Schokol off-road trail. I guess this is sort of like Jeep's Trail Rated or Rubicon badge, except for the G-Wagon. Anyway, you get inside and there's some other interesting stuff, starting with the buttons hanging down off the steering wheel. These are not just buttons, but screens. Over on the right side, you have a little screen dial here that you can use to adjust the drive mode from Comfort to Sport Plus, etc. Over on the other side, it's more interesting. Again, a button screen, but this one can be adjusted to show different things. If you tap on the screen, for instance, it becomes a button to turn on or off the exhaust, or change the suspension, or go into manual mode, and whichever one you have pulled up, you can turn it on or off with these little buttons hanging off the side of the buttons hanging off the steering wheel, and make your adjustments right there. Actually, it's more complicated than it sounds. It works pretty well in practice, pretty easy to adjust and change, and it's kind of a neat idea to have it there. Next up, another G-Wagon quirk or feature is that it has triple locking differentials. Still does after all these years. You can see it here, front, center, and rear lockers all mounted here in the middle like it always has been. Directly above that, you have a button marked off-road cockpit, and if you press that, it pulls up a screen in the infotainment system that actually delivers a surprisingly decent amount of good off-roading information. It shows like your current positioning, your coordinates, your tire pressures, all sorts of different stuff is displayed here, and this is also where you access that clear view kind of under the car camera that's new for 25. It really is a pretty good off-road cockpit. I don't think anybody will actually use it in a G63, but it's there in case you do, since this is Schokol proved after all. And since we're talking about the infotainment system, let's talk through a couple of interesting quirks in here. For one, there is a feature within the infotainment system that turns on panel heating. Okay, so in your car, you have a heated seat. That's fine, that's normal. In this car, you also have heated panels where the rest of your body may come in contact. So the door panel, the center armrest, it's heated. So not just your butt gets warmed or your back while you're driving along, but your arms can be warmed by the heated panels. That is luxury. And how about this for luxury? There is an energizing comfort area in the infotainment system where you can turn on a program that will adjust basically all of the configurable vehicle settings to match the comfort program you've suggested. You can see freshness, vitality, warmth. When you select any of those, it will change the interior ambient light color, the temperature and the climate control, and all of the heated seats and panels. It'll change what's on the radio. It'll start playing new music and put up a special graphic in the infotainment screen to match the thing you've selected, all to give you that feeling while you're driving along. As an example, here's the joy setting. But joy seems too easy. How about this one? Here is the summer rain energizing comfort setting. And if you go further down in energizing comfort, you can pull up a training program that will actually tell you exercises to do while sitting in your seat. In case you're getting stiff on a long drive, you can do prescribed exercises built into the infotainment system to keep loose, which is ridiculous. Of course, also in this section of the infotainment system, you have your seat massage functions, and you don't just get a simple massage. You can choose from a wide variety of massage programs, including hot massages that use the heated seat to improve the massage. This is true luxury. But anyway, beyond the cool stuff you can do in this infotainment system, I should say that generally I love how this infotainment system works. It's very easy, very intuitive, very simple to use. All sorts of stuff is integrated in here, but it's all easily findable and very responsive, and you can control it with a touchscreen or on your steering wheel or with a central pad. It's a really good user interface that works really well. Same goes, by the way, for the gauge cluster screen, which again, very configurable. You can have it show all sorts of information, exactly what you want. A full screen map, for instance, like you can see here, which is really nice, or even crazy high performance sport gauges that almost look like you're driving a spaceship, or just general vehicle information that can be valuable and perfectly configured to what you want to see. It all works really well. In terms of screens, though, I do have a bit of a disappointment in here, which is that the rear view mirror is not yet offered as a camera with a screen. So many other vehicles do this, and in fact, the Mercedes G-Wagon 4x4 Square, the lifted version, even has a rear view mirror camera screen, but it isn't in the regular G-Wagon, which is a shame because when you look back there, your view is kind of obstructed by that rear spare tire, and of course anybody sitting back here, or gear you might have, it'd be a lot better to have this rear view mirror as a screen, but they haven't done that yet. Also a little bit disappointing is the sunroof situation in here. The G-Wagon is not offered with a panoramic sunroof that covers the entire passenger compartment, front and rear. You can't get it. You can get it in basically every other SUV, but not the G-Wagon. Even the sunroof that you have is kind of weird. It's rather small and narrow. It doesn't really sunroof all that well. I guess that's another compromise that you make with the G-Wagon's rather unique, boxy, kind of old school design. And finally, we move on to the back seat of the G-Wagon, which is fine. Nothing particularly exciting back here. Rear seat room is okay. It's not huge in back, but certainly big enough for adults in terms of headroom, legroom, hip room. It all works out. You have enough space back here. Now, it's worth pointing out back here, there is no third row. They do not offer a 3-row seating G-Wagon. If you want a third row, you're going to get a GLS or something else. You can't get it in the G. But you do have a pretty good situation here with the center seat in the back. You don't have some giant hump in the floor like you do in so many other vehicles. Instead, it's pretty flat back here, so you really can use this entire 3-person back seat pretty easily with good rear seat space, even though you don't get the benefit of a third row. But anyway, beyond that stuff, some other items worth noting in back. You have some nice comfort features back here, specifically a climate control system for the back seats. You can change the temperature, the fan speed, which is nice, and there are climate vents in the center and on the sides. You also have heated rear seats, which is a nice luxury touch in back. And if you fold down this armrest, you have cup holders, which also adds to the comfort and convenience in back. Now, back here, you also have some power ports. You can see 2 USB-C ports in back, which is nice to have. And if you pull up this panel, you have a 12-volt cigarette lighter style power outlet, which is also good. Although, again, echoing what I said about the back, it would be nice to get a household style power outlet in here instead of just the cigarette lighter style power ports. That way you could charge a wider range of devices, but unfortunately they don't have it. Now, the other interesting thing back here is the headrests, which are rather odd in their design. You can see they don't look like traditional headrests. Instead, they sort of wrap around the seat back and kind of come down it, and then you can put the headrest all the way up if you want. I believe the reason they've done this is to try to create more visibility when the headrests are down for the driver looking through the rearview mirror so they can see out the back a little better. But But they could just put normal headrests on the car and then turn that rearview mirror into a camera screen like everybody else does. Unfortunately, Mercedes-Benz isn't there yet with the G, and so we have these rather strange headrests instead. But anyway, there's your full tour of the quirks and features. Now it's time to get behind the wheel and see how this updated G63 feels on the road. All right, driving the new G63, or the slightly updated G63. This car, you could write a whole book about the pros and cons of this car, the negatives, the perception, positive and negative, the way people treat this car, the way people want to be seen. I mean, there is so much to say about the G-Wagon. But let's start with one really big plus for this year. It is amazing that it took them so long, but they have finally added a lane centering feature to the adaptive cruise control, so sort of like an auto steering feature. A lot of regular cars have had this for like 5 years now. A lot of Mercedes-Benz models, especially high-end Mercedes-Benz models, have had this for like 10 years now. But finally, the G-Wagon gets it for 25, which means that it can not only adaptive cruise, which it's been able to do for a long time, but it can finally self-steer, especially on the freeway, which is great. It's about time this car had that tech. Okay, so next thing to discuss is just what this car can do and what it can't do. What it can do is basically everything, which is, I think, why people love it so much. What it can't do is be subtle or positively social. My wife's car was damaged a couple of weeks ago, and it's been in the shop. And she's been driving the press cars with our kids around, the Ioniq 5, no problem, the Audi SQ6, no problem. This thing shows up, she goes, nah. I'm not gonna participate. And it's hard to blame her. And it's funny because we were talking about it. There's a certain contingent of people who this would show up and they'd be like, oh my God, I can't wait to drive. But there's also a certain contingent of people who don't want to be seen in it. And that's kind of the thing about the G-Wagon. It's not exactly the most like friendly vehicle. It exudes a certain force, a certain aggressiveness. On the flip side, it exudes a certain aggressiveness. That's also a benefit for a lot of people, you know? You could go and buy a lot of SUVs that are a lot cheaper and perform as well. You can get a BMW X5M. But by comparison to this, it's anonymous. The G-Wagon not only has amazing performance, etc., which I'll cover in a minute, but it has this look that nothing else has, that not only says I'm rich, but also says I'm cool. This boxy utilitarian look that was originally designed for capability just says, like, I'm cool. I can go anywhere, I can do anything, I can be anyone, and I'm richer than you while I'm doing it. And a lot of people really like that the G-Wagon says that. And then there's a lot of people who specifically don't like just how in-your-face this car is, particularly the 63 and particularly in orange, I will say. I've noticed around like a silver 550 base model, base wheels, actually can be a relatively subtle car, and it gives you a lot of the same benefits. But an orange G63, that's a bit of a yikes situation. That's a bit much. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about everything else this car can do. It's a very capable family hauler. It has become a very comfortable car, thanks to that big redesign in 2019, where it looks basically the same, but it completely changed, and it is now actually a pretty usable and comfortable luxury car that's like nice and enjoyable to drive, and it feels good and it's luxurious. That was a big upgrade. Whereas the old ones were more utilitarian, they were much more kind of like size friendly, but they were trucks. And this is no longer that from a driving perspective. Now it still is a truck in the sense that it can go off road with the best of them, which is another great capability of the G-Wagon. And it's fast too. I mean, the G60, any G-Wagon is fast, but the G63 is exceptionally fast. It rumbles as you drive it, which is what people want who have a car that looks like this. And it looks the part, and it feels the part, and it is the part, and it is just such an aggressive, over-the-top, like burly, kind of vehicle. It's just amazing how this vehicle has kind of cemented its place in the culture as a car that like all these Hollywood celebrities drive, etc. But it's also just so capable. Now, the drawback is it is incredibly expensive. But if you want a car that does everything, and if you want to look this cool, you pay up for it. And Mercedes knows people are going to do it, and they continue to jack up the price and jack up the price and jack up the price. And there continue to be waiting lists and interested shoppers, and they continue to be supply constrained. They can't make enough of these to sell enough of them, even though they continue to raise the price. And so that just tells Mercedes-Benz, hey, there's a big demand for this car, and you drive it around and you understand why. If you can get past the image, you understand why this car is so desirable. It just is a do-everything car for a certain subset of the population who wants to project this image all around. And nothing does it like a G-Wagon. And so that's the new 2025 Mercedes-AMG G63. This is certainly a controversial vehicle. Some people hate it, but some people love it. And for a certain segment of the wealthy population who wants a cool SUV that looks really capable and special and goes fast, nothing else will do, even at a huge $200,000 price tag. That's the G63, and now it's time to give this vehicle a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 69 out of 100, which puts the newest G63 here against rivals. Amazingly, the electric G580 actually gets a better score, mainly because you don't give up much in performance, but you do gain some decent practicality given the G63's radically awful fuel economy. Regardless of which you choose, any G-Wagon is an excellent car. A bit compromised compared to rivals that aren't inspired by a military work truck, such as the Porsche Cayenne, but those rivals definitely don't make the statement that the G-Wagon does, for better or worse.